Alright, before we get started, real fast. Like, subscribe, share. I love you all. Let's do it. Within our community, it's commonly known that there are three people in the Holy Trinity, which is Strider, Hinderer, and Chris Reeve. Now, I argue that fact. I think there is not a Holy Trinity. I think there is a plethora of custom makers, designers, and production pieces that are absolutely iconic. Personally, I believe Medford falls under that category. Whether you love them, like them, hate them, or despise them, you cannot deny they are iconic. And their most iconic model is the Praetorian Ti. This is an old knife, came out a long time ago. When it did, it shook up the world. Years have passed since then, and honestly, not much has changed. The man, the make, the model, or the manufacturing process. He no longer uses D2, he uses a whole bunch of other different more high-end steels, but everything else is still pretty much the same. So, in 2020, in a year and a time where manufacturers and companies and makers are making massive strides, the Praetorian Ti is iconic, but is it still good? Together, let's find out. This offering from Medford Knife and Tool retails at around $2,000. Now, at that point in time, it's not just a knife, it's a piece of statement, it's a piece of history, it's a piece of art. But I want to argue with you guys for a moment and say that it should be a whole lot more than that. What truly defines a knife at $2,000? Is it just the edge? If a knife is just a tool and a tool is used to cut, then the Praetorian Ti does cut. Does it cut well? Does it cut clean? It's okay. It's not the best. It's also not the worst. It's decidedly middle of the road, but it does cut. But I would argue that a tool at this price point should not only cut, but it should cut comfortably, reliably, steadily, and arguably better than the competition. Now, with that out of the way, on to the actual review of the Medford Praetorian Ti from an unbiased user standpoint. Deployment of the Praetorian Ti is done through this oblong fuller. It deploys smooth and retracts a little smoother. You can open it with a reverse flick, though it does require quite a bit of wrist. But the best way, in my opinion, is that slow roll. You can feel the tight tolerances, the slight amount of tension, that sort of hydraulic movement, and then that nice loud lockup. Now, there are things about Medford Knife and Tool that I really like. Their build quality is undeniably good. I love the sound of lockup. Only Medford's lock up like that, where they're just these big, loud, chunking thonk sounds. Now, I mentioned lockup, and I do mean lock up. No movement, no play, no stick. It is secure. And to all of you that just had a heart attack right now, again, I use my knives. This is $2,000. I will use something that costs $2,000 just as hard as I will something that costs $5. Maybe I'm crazy. Oh well. Either way, I'm happy. So as far as lockup, deployment, and engagement, so far, so good. Before I talk about fit and finish, I want everybody to hear something. I don't know if you can hear that weird noise. While reviewing this knife, putting through some actual use, like it's built to be done, this knife has acquired this weird grinding sound whenever you open the actual blade or close it. It does not interfere with lockout or opening. It's just a noise, but it's a really obnoxious one, and it's something that does not read quality, especially because this knife costs $2,000. That is unacceptable. Now, with that in mind, the fit and finish otherwise is quite excellent. Everything has this nice little bit of milling done, slight contouring on the actual blade itself. You can see these gorgeous grind lines on the actual blade. It's very nice, very interesting. It's very extra, very Medford pocket clip. Fit and finish is something that, in my opinion, Medford really shines on. There is an argument that expensive knives are art, and as such, a Medford knife and tool product qualifies as an art project. I can see the logic behind that, and I'm not disagreeing with anybody's personal opinion, but my personal opinion are it should be able to be functional as art if you want it so, and also as an actual knife and a tool. And the ergonomics, as far as a tool, are honestly horrible. First off, this very Medford clip is a hot spot all around it. Every single piece, whenever you are holding this knife, you can feel this big, gigantic, gaudy clip that takes up more than half of this relatively large knife. At no point in time will you forget it is in your hands. Furthermore, these flat scales that you can see are hot spots all the way around. Every single piece of the outline of this knife is a hot spot. This knife is a custom by Seraphim Knives. It's called the Yakuza. This is also considered to be an art knife. However, it is ergonomically sound, it functions, it's beautiful, it opens, it deploys, and there's no real hot spots. There is a line to where something can be an art piece and can also be functionable and usable. For me personally, the Medford Praetorian Ti on this front absolutely failed. It's designed to look cool, to be interesting, but it's not designed to actually feel good in hand. Furthermore, this is actually a much smaller knife you might be led to believe. Now it is big, it is fat, it is heavy, but as far as the actual handle, because it is designed this way, the only piece you get on your actual hand is right here to right there. That's it. You get more handle on a Spyderco Smock than you do on a Medford, because you can hold this entire handle in your hand. This you can only get right here. For me personally, means my pinky is right here on this spot. This is not a lot of handle. It is a beautiful knife. I love the way this knife looks, but functionally, it is very much form over function. As far as the actual ergonomics and joy of use, for me, it's one of the worst knives I've ever felt, by far. As far as edge geometry, as you saw in the beginning of the video, this knife cuts. The belief system that Medfords are so thick behind the edge they don't cut is wrong. It is inaccurate, it is an outright lie that is created by people who've never actually handled this knife. This knife has problems, absolutely. Does it cut? Yes, it cuts, it stabs, it does all the things any other knife will do. Does it cut as well as these knives for much cheaper? No, it does not. It does not cut great, but it cuts okay. But again, it still cuts. Medfords and knives cut by Medford are all very much similar. They all have similar designs, similar styles, similar fit and finishes. They're all very much akin to the same knife in a different form factor. There are big knives. There are smaller, more fear-friendly knives. There is a whole spectrum of cutlery out there. In the end, there is only one Medford knife and tool, not counting the 3 other completely unnecessary offshoots they created for some weird reason. But either way, you always recognize a Medford. Whether you like the style, love it, or hate it, you recognize it, and you cannot deny it. Because what do these 2 knives have in common? Even non-knife folks recognize these 2 brands. They are just that polarizing and that well known. The Opinel and the Medford. It's an awkward pair to say the very least, but again, they are iconic and they have a certain look to them and nothing else quite comes close. In closing, would I recommend the Medford Knives Praetorian Ti? As far as buying it, no. However, I would argue that everyone should try this. This knife is again iconic. It is either beautiful to you or it is ugly, but either way, it is a part of our community's history. It is a valid, integral piece of who we are. Whether you love it, hate it, like it, or can't get enough of it, it does not matter. This knife, this company, this brand is iconic and it serves as a constant reminder and a piece of our history. Pro and con, negative or positive, it does not matter. At a certain point in time, it just becomes about the history and the love. If you are a knife collector, should you get a Praetorian Ti? Yes. If you are a knife user, should you get a Praetorian Ti? In my opinion, no. I always give 2 scores, but these 2 scores this time are going to be night and day. First off, as far as an actual EDC roll, is this a good knife to have? What is my score? It is going to be a 2 out of 10. There are almost every other knife out there is better for EDC, better for carry, better for use than the Praetorian Ti. If you are an investor, collector, or a lover of the hobby and you want to be able to experience everything and have that nice variety and spice of life, I would give this knife a 8 out of 10. I cannot give it a 10 out of 10. There's too many problems, but it's a beautiful knife. It's a functional knife-ish. The Praetorian Ti is part of history. It is part of time, and to be quite honest, it's a relic. It is a relic that needs to be updated. It is a relic that needs to be refined. It is a relic that needs to have a price point that reflects the time, the quality, and the materials that goes into this make and model. Medford knives are priced outrageous. If you're curious what my personal opinion is on this knife, honestly, I think it's stupid. I think it's extra, and for that purpose, I enjoy it. It's not for sale. It won't be for sale. I have a collection that spans the ages of knife making, and I love that. And this knife, despite its faults, despite all its problems, sits proudly in that collection. That being said, with such fantastic offerings, both from Medford and without, for substantially less, is it worth the price? Is it worth the investment? Honestly, no. Well, this knife is still not going anywhere for a long, long time, if ever. With all that being said though, folks, this is just one guy's opinion talking at his kitchen table, on the internet, on a shitty camera. At the end of the day, you make your own evaluations, you judge for yourself, and honestly, regardless of whatever you choose, just know it is up to you. It is your choice. My opinion, no one else's opinion matters. Do, carry, buy, own, use, collect, throw in a safe, do whatever makes you happy, and don't let anybody else judge you for it. Love yourself, love the hobby, love each other.